Traveling with a group of people can be great. Whether you're planning a trip with friends or family, traveling with a group has its benefits. But there are also some mistakes that I see people making over and over again. Hey, my name is Jeannie and I have been helping people plan trips to Iceland for the past 8 years. So I have definitely seen my fair share of group dynamics. I don't want you to make these mistakes, so let's get into it. The first thing that you need to do to avoid group travel mistakes is establishing group travel preferences. When you're traveling in a group, you have different dynamics. Everyone is going to want to do something a little different, spend a little bit more or less time at each place. All kinds of things come into play here. Someone doesn't want to go on a tour. Someone doesn't want to spend money there. Someone doesn't want to eat that kind of food. A lot can come into play. So it's a good idea to sit down before you even book anything and talk about the various travel preferences. This way, kind of everyone gets on the same page and you can start to pick activities, duration, everything like that based on those preferences. A couple of key things to keep in mind. I would make sure that everyone has at least one key thing on the itinerary that they want to do. That could be a site that they want to stop at, a tour that they want to take, maybe some kind of food that they want to try, they want to go hiking or not. Some people would like to be really active on their trips, some people don't want to. Either way, making sure that everyone has that kind of input and has one need met. That would be ideal. One thing to note is you could assign a group leader if need be, and that way someone is responsible for making sure that the group knows, okay, we only have 30 minutes at this stop, or okay, here's the restaurant that we're eating at. Everyone can kind of spread out and get what you want, things like that. So having a group leader is something to consider if you feel like it's going to be tough to wrangle everyone. The next thing that I would suggest is planning breaks from each other. Listen, as much as we love all of our family members or any kind of friends that we're going to be traveling with, traveling can be exhausting. It can be trying. And if you're spending every single moment of every single day together, that's not a great idea. Everyone needs their own break and personal space. So remember to plan either breaks in throughout the day or giving kind of like the evening time to break apart and just do what everyone wants. Otherwise, you're going to be crammed in the car together all day, eating at all the restaurants together. You know, if your hotel room is all like booked together in like this little area, it can be a little much, right? So just making sure that everyone has a little bit of time for themselves. Before I get into my next tip, I wanted to make sure that you know about my travel guides and maps. This is the perfect way to tackle group travel together, in that it has everything that you would need to know for researching your trip start to finish, planning guides, checklists, research all at your fingertip. And in addition, the digital maps have everything, including restaurants, toilets, sites, Jeannie's Gems, you name it, I've listed it on there. The reason that this is so nice is that it allows all of the members in your group to have that research in front of them. So not one person has to be responsible for arranging all the details of a trip, but when you have my travel guide, that means that all people in your group can access it. And furthermore, on the digital map, you can add people so that again, at the end of the day, when people want to break off and go do their own thing, then they have the information at the palm of their hands looking at the stops on my map. Definitely check that out and I will link it in the description below. Now let's get back to the tips. The next mistake to avoid in group travel is not knowing what's available. There is nothing worse than going on vacation and not knowing when you're gonna eat next or where the toilet stops are. These are the basics, right? So you wanna go see the waterfall, but also you have to eat. So where are all these things located? So doing research and knowing ahead of time how Iceland is laid out, what's available, what's coming up next, this is key to having a great trip. So involving all the members of the group in the planning process and really looking at what's available. What are the tours you can take in Iceland? What kind of foods do you need to eat? All of that kind of stuff. Make it this fun experience in the planning process, not just getting there and no one really knows what's going on. The whole planning process is just a lead up to the trip, and sometimes the planning can be just as exciting because it's your preparation before you actually get to experience the stuff. The next thing to consider, and this is really important, is a budget and how to split up costs. So when you're going on vacation, especially to Iceland because it's so expensive, things are gonna add up really quickly. Hotels, transportation, flights, accommodation, all of that stuff really starts to compound. So when you're staying with a group, sometimes that's advantageous because you can divide that up between multiple people. And depending on your group size, sometimes you're eligible for discounts, like if you're going to a museum or if you're taking a tour. You just always have to look into that kind of stuff. And it's always worth reaching out for a discount, depending on if you have usually a group of 10 or more. So in terms of a budget, making sure that people know how much you want to spend per day, how much you want to spend per night at accommodation, if you want to go to really fancy restaurants or if you want to stay really budget, all of that stuff. And it should be determined ahead of time so that you're not in the moment trying to decide, should we go to this expensive place or this less expensive place? Next up is you could have some sort of running total or even a budget spreadsheet if that's what you like to do, in a way to keep track of all expenses. So it's up to your group whether you would want to pay in the moment for something, like splitting it up right there, maybe at a restaurant, everyone gets their own separate check, or perhaps one person is responsible for all the payments and then it's split up at the end. So in that case, transparency with some kind of budget list or spreadsheet will come in handy. But again, just making sure all the money stuff is discussed ahead of time. My next tip, and the very most important by far for group travel in Iceland, is to plan in advance. Sometimes I feel like a broken record because I have said this so many times in my videos, but it's worth repeating because it's so important. And I still see people not planning in advance and it's going to bite them in the end. Planning in advance in Iceland is across the board. I would say that, a solo traveler or to a group of travelers, but I think especially for group travel, it's important because when you're trying to manage things for 4+ people, it's gonna be a little bit harder to find things like accommodation, transportation, tour availability. All of that stuff comes into play when you're booking group travel. I've said it so many times how few accommodation is available in Iceland in general, but the closer you get to your travel dates, the harder it is that you're gonna find accommodations that can accommodate a group. So my general recommendation is planning 6 to 12 months in advance in order to find the best availability and pricing for a group. Alrighty friends, those are my 5 best tips for group traveling. And by the way, if you would like to find some money saving tips, then make sure to watch this video that is popping up on your screen so that for group travel, you can save as much money as possible. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, happy planning.